right, we're going to jump right in here. So myself and Ron, presenters today. Hope everyone's doing well, staying safe, staying healthy. Hope business is starting to get back to normal for you guys. We're going to talk about some things today that kind of address some of those issues and how different companies are dealing with some of the cost issues that they have and where they're putting the money, especially with the trade show factor. A lot of trade shows not happening this year. So we're going to talk a lot about that, but just overall, hope everyone's doing well. All right, today we're going to talk about how sunk cost biases affect building product specification. So we're going to discuss how to increase product specification opportunities by avoiding the fatal mistake of sunk cost bias. We're going to get into what that is here. So we're going to review some strategies that will help you reach the decision makers and focus your efforts on product specification. So some of these strategies include how to win by cutting your losses, eliminating losing strategies, avoiding status quo biases, and focusing on the essentials of product specification. Why would smart, passionate, hardworking product manufacturers continue to invest in programs that lose money and offer little return? An example of sunk cost bias is when a company continues to invest time, money, and resources into a losing program simply because they have already incurred or sunk a cost and that cannot be recouped. How many times has your company stayed the course with a marketing program or a partnership because of how heavily you were invested in it, despite that it was not working? Nobody wants to admit they wasted money and time on a failed specification program. If you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. Sunk cost bias can turn into a vicious cycle for building product manufacturers. The more they invest into a failed program, the more they hold on to and want to see it through. Product manufacturers shouldn't avoid risk. You need to risk to be successful. However, when a program is failing spectacularly, it's better to quit quickly and learn from the mistake. One of the most famous examples of sunk cost bias is the Concord Jet. The French and UK governments spent over $2.8 billion on developing the world's first mass transport supersonic jet. The plane could fly from New York to London in 2 hours and 52 minutes. However, the French and British governments continued to lose money for more than 40 years, investing in the Concord Jet and never turned a profit. The more money they spent, the more difficult it was to pull the plug. Product manufacturers need the courage to pull the plug on programs with zero or low ROI. In his book, Essentialism, author Greg McKeown identifies several sunk cost bias traps that companies may fall into. We review the traps from the point of a product manufacturer. Don't overvalue failing specification programs. Get over the fear of waste. Be quick to admit failure so you can start over. And be aware of the status quo. So what does this all mean? Let's dig into it a little deeper. How many of you have invested into a specification program cooked up by you and your sales and marketing teams that ultimately failed to live up to what its expectations were? Month after month, year after year, you cling onto this failing program because of the ownership you have in it or the passion you have that drove it into being. You may be getting few products specified, but subconsciously you value this program because you were the team leader on it. Or if you weren't the team leader and instead you work for one of your competitors, how much would you value this program, looking at it from a different perspective? You also have to think of it that way. Another hang-up for product manufacturers is the fear of waste. We've had it drilled into our heads since we were kids that waste is bad. Don't waste your food, don't waste your time. We become susceptible to sunk cost bias when we fall back on the don't waste mentality. Abandoning an upcoming trade show that you've invested time preparing for feels like a wasted time. Ditching an AIA lunch and learn that's been delivered year after year can be tough if you originally created it and you feel connected to it. Creating a new course to help your product reps can be challenging, especially if you can't let go of old ideas and tired strategies. The good news is that once you've identified the problem and admitted that you've fallen into one of the sunk cost bias traps, you can change course and head in a successful direction. Have you ever had a friend that was too stubborn to ask for directions while driving? They wouldn't listen to anyone about how to get to some place or use their smartphone to pull up a map. Once you admit a mistake, you admit that you are wiser than you once were. Successful specification programs are built on avoiding the mistakes of the past. Finally, beware of the status quo. Just because your company has attended a specific trade show or hosted their CE course on a particular site for years doesn't mean you can't question the system. Many sales and marketing professionals don't question commitments because they have already been established as tradition by the company. Sunk cost bias can have long-term negative effects for a product manufacturer. Once you take emotion out of the equation, product manufacturers can make sound decisions and avoid sunk cost bias. So, where should product manufacturers avoid sunk cost bias? What specification strategies might be vulnerable to such? Here's a few programs to consider. Excuse me. Continuing education courses, AEC firm visits, and trade shows. Let's dive into those a little bit. Probably know their strategy aside from trade shows suffer more from sunk cost bias than education programs. There is the old attitude, this is the way we've always done it. Well, what if the way you've always done it is producing low ROI, wasting resources, and decreasing specification opportunities? After producing education courses for over 2 decades, we've seen it all. From brilliant video case studies, study courses that generate thousands of leads annually, to lousy PowerPoint presentations that make architects fall asleep, or in some cases even fall out of their chairs. So how can product manufacturers avoid sunk cost bias when developing education programs? Don't commit to a losing strategy. That's one. Whatever happens, be able to pull the plug, and if the education course you want and more importantly need is not happening, pull the plug. Most AIA courses are developed by product reps, sales and marketing teams, and consultants. It's critical that you don't pawn off the development of your course to a random employee just because product rep Bob doesn't have a heavy schedule and says he knows PowerPoint may not make him the ideal choice. Don't hand off the course to an intern or the front desk assistant out of desperation or to save money. In the end, you will invest more money and resources if you choose poorly. Don't force something that is a mismatch. Finally, get a second opinion. Many times we get emotionally attached to a major decision. Don't invest money and time into a program unless you're convinced it will be a success. So what makes a great continuing education course? What will increase your brand recognition and product specifications? Here are the major secrets to success. Video content and narration are critical in 2021. Incredibly, this year there is still a large AEC platform out there that delivers read-only courses that architects have to read like a newspaper article. Video and audio courses have more participation, generate more leads, and open doors for more specifications. There's no excuse for manufacturers to throw away their money on low-performing read-only courses. Create a course for all 3 formats, including online, webinar, face-to-face, or in-person virtual. This produces more specification opportunities and winning results. A universally designed course can be easily converted into every format. Don't sink money into one course format. If possible, register the course with multiple organizations and obtain CE hour designations such as AIA HSW, GBCI for lead APs, IDCEC for interior designers, RCEP for engineers, and ASLA for landscape architects. Obviously, you don't want to register an exterior landscape product excuse me, for IDCEC credit for interior designers, but the more organizations you register a course with, the wider your net of design professionals and specification opportunities are going to be. Finally, integrating the most up-to-date, sustainable content into the course is critical. There are over 200,000 lead professionals and thousands of designers working on living, building challenge and well-certified projects. These professionals need CE hours, and they want to know how your product can benefit them. Your course should contain information about HPDs, health product declarations, declare labels, environmental product declarations or EPDs, VOC emissions, testing, etc. Sunk cost bias can have particularly negative impacts on manufacturers during the COVID-19 pandemic. How many of you know of companies firing employees and shutting down facilities? Many product manufacturers were unprepared for the ban on AI lunch and learns and architectural office visits. Some manufacturers invested heavily for years in face-to-face presentations without ever considering webinars or online courses. Now they've paid a heavy price since that product specification door is shut. Just because you've always done it that way doesn't mean it's the most effective approach. So how can manufacturers reach decision makers if they can't visit their offices? Visiting architects' offices for lunch and learn, a product demo, or a chat over coffee is an important routine for many product reps. Pre-pandemic, some of the best ways to reach a design professional are sitting across from them, making eye contact, and delivering a personal, engaging presentation. The office visit may be an introductory meeting, a product specification conversation, or a specification presentation with the key decision makers. Here are some strategies to reach decision makers during the pandemic in the place of face-to-face office visits. If you're making contact with AEC firms that you've never contacted in the past or trying to reach a new person in the firm, setting up a short introductory meeting is advised. Be respectful of their time. Use the chat to gather information about the firm and projects. Once you have established a contact with the firm, you can plan a proprietary presentation to discuss a specific product and a project in mind. Finally, an AI Lunch and Learn webinar can be set up for the entire firm. Some manufacturers are having food delivered to AEC firms or sending food vouchers and restaurant gift cards to replace meal delivery. Others are contracting with third-party spec experts to set up virtual meetings with the decision makers. These are ways to reach the decision makers at AEC firms. Finally, we get to trade shows. They are very vulnerable to sunk cost bias. Your company may have attended the same industry trade show for the past 10 or 20 years even. It's been a tradition. You visit clients, you make new deals, your team enjoys the networking experience. However, what if that industry trade show has seen plummeting attendance in the past few years? What if you no longer see the leads and opportunities you used to? And obviously costs go up tremendously too with all these shows. With the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, many manufacturers have had to rethink trade shows as a necessary component of their sales and marketing strategies. 2020 was an awful year for trade shows. Many were canceled or went virtual. Yet manufacturers will still charge an arm and a leg to participate in a virtual trade show with no physical booth. Some industry trade shows were charging $5,000 for a virtual booth, despite the fact that you may have invested heavily into multiple trade shows in the past. 2021 is the year to ditch trade shows. Here are a few reasons why. Many design professionals are only attending virtual shows to collect CE hours. At a face-to-face trade show, design professionals visit manufacturer booths in between education sessions. That's not the case with virtual trade shows. Unlike a webinar where you are in the driver's seat, at a virtual event, you are at the mercy of random people visiting your virtual booth. Most virtual trade shows lack of cohesive anchor for the event. Yes, they may have an opening speaker and closing address, but over the course of many days, participants who are mainly design professionals use the CE course schedule as a guide for their time. There are no live floor product demos, cocktail hour meet and greets, or a unifying force to connect all the events and virtual booths. Most manufacturers find value in a physical booth because it allows them a multitude of ways to engage with a design professional. A product rep can hand out samples, brochures, and swag and encourage conversations with people on the trade show floor. There are few incentives for event attendees to visit a virtual booth, as many can attest to have participated in these events in 2020, myself included. The bottom line is that virtual trade shows are less effective and generate less leads than a physical trade show event. If you have invested heavily in trade shows in the past, it would be wise to consider sitting out the virtual events in 2021. Instead, sign up as an attendee and walk the virtual floor. It's cheaper and you won't waste thousands of precious marketing dollars. Your marketing dollars are better spent elsewhere with higher ROI programs. I will say, so with some of these virtual events, they do have networking opportunities and networking hubs where you can search for people participating in the show, and participating in that is probably for sure worth your time. Probably only cost you maybe a couple $100 to sign up as an attendee and go into those. So that would definitely be, I think, worth the time. You probably get something out of it, but in terms of the virtual booth presence, we've found them not to be effective, and that's been across the board from clients we've talked to. So despite COVID-19, despite the many problems plaguing the economy, the essentials of product specification are the same. The only difference are the tools. Manufacturers need to focus on the essentials. What are your goals? Are you making an introductory presentation to a specifier, or are you providing advice about a design issue? Who are the decision makers? Are you targeting the correct people? Are you trying to reach the project architect, or is your product geared more for interior designers or an electrical engineer? How do you become part of the team? It is impossible for a design professional to know everything about every product going into a building. There are thousands of products that are integrated into a standard commercial project, and they have to make specification decisions about every one of them. Design professionals need experts that they can depend on, and if you can become trustworthy, you are on your way to getting your product specified as their trusted resource. How do you get specified? The ultimate goal is to get in the office, master specifications, quit reactionary selling, and get involved in a project earlier. How can companies thrive during extreme circumstances like the COVID-19 pandemic? Another plan to consider is a risk management strategy, which can help in these difficult times. What risks does your company face? What assets and employees are at risk? What financial burden do the risks place on employees and the company? And how can your company reduce the risk and strengthen your economic health? Often product manufacturers are overwhelmed on a daily basis, putting out fires, calling on contractors, putting in bids, and don't have time and resources to spare. Manufacturers don't have the time to invest in creating education courses or setting up virtual AEC firm presentations. Removing obstacles can help increase specification opportunities. What is the main obstacle preventing you from reaching your specification goals? Sometimes hiring an expert to help carry that burden can help you reach those goals. So that concludes our presentation today. We're going to open it up for questions and see if you have anything you want us to address. And I've got Mr. Ron Blink and Brad Blink on the line as well, ready to answer some questions. So if you have any, please feel free to type those in. Let's see, one question that came up is getting started on or developing an education course. What sort of collateral do you have to have? Okay, so one of the things that we always suggest, and our team consists of people that have backgrounds in graphic design, architecture, engineering, and creative writing, adult learning, and so we usually bring a lot of these people to the table when we look at all these assets that you have, or this content. So when developing something, what our team does is we analyze everything from the graphics you have, like video clips, animations, images, graphs, things of that nature, comparative analysis. Also, any technical content on the products that you have. You might have some PowerPoints that are more marketing presentations that are, really rich with content that you can use for a course. Any video clips, any installation videos, any case studies. Case studies are huge. Anytime, I would say, whether you're using it for a CE course or not, anytime you have the opportunity to thoroughly document especially high-profile project with your product, please do it. And I don't mean just someone out there. I mean, I know cell phone cameras take decent pictures now, but I mean, just relying on somebody with no photography skills and to go snap some pictures of something, it might behoove you to get professional pictures done, or someone that knows what they're doing, to get some really good photography of projects where your product is installed, so you can use it in future applications like a course, like just examples on your website. Even case studies on their own on your website are great to have. So these are some of the things that you might want to gather up to basically use as fodder for a course. And our team typically gets together with an expert. We like to have, honestly, on the team, we like to have someone that's more the technical person, possibly sales, and then also marketing, or sales and marketing and technical. Because to be honest with you, when we have those two different people in the room, they have a very different perspectives. So the only problem is, if you let a strictly marketing person run away with developing a CE course, and this can be internal too. So this is advice whether you use us or not. If you're doing something internally, I would recommend having a team, because if you have a marketing person that's developing a course, it's usually going to be a thinly veiled infomercial about a product, and may not truly be educational, and just be kind of way too 101 for the architect and too salesy. Whereas if you get a technical person that runs away with it, it may be too much of a snoozer and too in the weeds and too just boring, frankly. So I mean, and maybe the graphics are not that great either. So and fonts are all over the map. So again, marrying those two sides of the equation up is, I think, really important. And they're both going to have assets that are crucial to developing a course, and knowledge, access to, because the bigger the company is, the more diverse you're going to have all that information. You're going to have people that have all the graphics and everything else, and then you've got people that have access to all the technical information too. So, all right, so I'm looking at another question here. What are some of the top CE courses you recommend? So I don't know, Brad, you might have some ideas for that. I know that if you go to ronblank.com, the newest courses are going to be some of the better ones, just that had more video. If you look and see which ones have video in them, those are really good. On Green CE, we've got a lot of the video case study series, ones that we did with Big Ass Fans and with Copper Development Association. Those are going to show you more of the documentary style education courses. And then some of the other ones are going to be more like a PowerPoint that has video clips and animations and is narrated. So that's kind of a spectrum there. And a couple of people asking for the presentation. Absolutely. We're going to send you a link to the recording of the presentation, and then also a copy of the PDF as well for you to reference. All right, so what is the current, Austin's asking, what is the current take in the US market in regards to product-specific presentations? Is this welcomed, or CE courses only being considered? So Austin, that's a great question. And I'll say every situation is different. I would say if you're coming into a firm cold and they just are generally interested in learning about the product and what you have to offer as an expert, then typically a CE course is going to be your best lead off in terms of getting their attention. If they have a project that's specifically applicable at the time, a lot of times you'll have people that, like a project architect or principal, stick around after the presentation and ask some specifics, maybe even pull out some drawings. I've seen that happen in front of my face plenty of times. Whereas if you know the particular project that a firm is doing, you have more intel, and you know specifically that your product can really save them some money, something they hadn't considered yet, then that might be a situation where you want to zero in on the project lead on that particular project and say, hey, look, offer them the AIA course, but to say, look, I see you're doing this. I can come in and talk to you specifically, a real short conversation about how this can really help you in this way, and maybe give some tidbits or some teasers on why that is the case. I've actually seen a course, an AIA course. Some might say AIA would probably say devolve into a proprietary presentation, but I would say what you're there for is it evolves into a proprietary presentation, and they don't really. I was there when a client of ours was giving a presentation, and the architects, there were about 7 principals and project architects in the room, and they found the product to be very specific to a issue they were having on a project. So they basically just put the time out on the CE course. They didn't really care about credits, and they dove into a conversation about the project, and they got the plans out, and the client went to work on talking specifics about applications. So don't be afraid to bail out of your AIA presentation if they want to talk specifics about a project. You know, there might be some awkwardness about credit awarded and all that, but you might have to navigate the weeds on that specifically in that moment. But don't be afraid to bail out if you get that opportunity. But again, it's going to be up to the architect in the situation. Here he's asking, what's the biggest challenge that keeps us from succeeding with programs? So as far as challenges in succeeding with programs, that specifically in the kind that we offer, you know, the biggest challenge honestly is going to be follow-up, because, you know, everything that we develop, or whether you are doing an online course or whatever, you're getting a lot of really good information. And whether you're doing a lunch and learn yourself, or whether you're doing a webinar, an online course with us, or getting specific specification leads, there's a lot of good content there. You have all the contact information, you know they've been exposed to your product. So the biggest challenge honestly is follow up and follow through. You have to track it, because building a relationship with an architect or spec writer takes time. It takes investment in time. It takes tracking that information and knowing that you're going to make that introduction and put yourself in front of them, and they may not have a project right at that moment that's applicable to your product. But you want to stay there in their front of mind. You want to make sure that you continually stay in front of them, not bug them to death, but, you know, every so often you just make yourself known. Hey, something new we have, just wanted to see if there's anything you need, let me know. And just be scarce, but be there ready when they do need you. So are the A&D community, Paul's asking if the A&D community is reaching out to us asking about in-person presentations. I wouldn't say, I mean, obviously we're getting requests through our system, or some of our clients are getting requests for presentations. It's getting more and more. I mean, you're starting to see a slow, you know, ease back into wanting lunch and learn style presentations. It really depends on the market, honestly. As you can tell, it's pretty much, a lot of it's in tune with, you know, states and how they're reacting to opening up. It also has to do on a personal level, also at a firm level. What's the firm's policy? Most major firms now are nationwide, if not worldwide. So even if you're in South Florida and everybody in the office is like, yeah, we'll see anybody, you know, we don't care, whatever, you know, come on in, bring us lunch. But they're with HOK and they have a policy that's company-wide, that based out of a different state. Maybe they're headquartered in California or something. I don't know. Gensler say they're headquartered there. So they might have a policy against it that spreads to all their locations. So it really depends on the firm itself. Now, we are constantly doing surveys of architects to find out when, because obviously a lot of our programs are virtual right now, when we'd love for them to be back in person. But it's not just about our comfort level and our reps' comfort level and the ability to go around and fly around. You can go show up anywhere, but it's the firm's comfort level with having people in, their policies, the individual architect. Will they see you? Are they still working at home? A lot of architects are still working from home. So they're not going to let you into their house. I mean, so the virtual option is still there, and a lot of architects are warmed up to that. So I'd say leave yourself open to both, market yourself as both if you want to have in-person presentations. But again, we feel that, you know, we're trying to go live by the end of the year, you know, maybe September, October. We're pushing it out obviously till then, but we hope to start to do that. Obviously, be smart about it and do it in markets that make sense. But it's a constant battle for sure. All right, someone's asking about setting up a time to meet with them. We'll definitely get with you offline. What are some tips for developing a course to stand out to an architect? And Brad and Ron, feel free to jump in here too. One thing I would recommend is anything that deals with a code change, like if there's a new code that you can address that your product is really solving a problem for. Case studies that are really vibrant and well known. Case studies, I will say again about case studies, if you do one, don't just rely on one. Especially if your product is something that is applicable to multiple types of projects, whether it's commercial, institutional, government, entertainment, residential, whatever it is, show multiple case studies, because you're going to want to have a wide breadth of basically application to show that your product can be used in a lot of different places. But again, I can't emphasize enough, high quality photography, get information about a case study. If you really get into it, it's not just pictures of before and after, but it's talking about what was the design challenge here with this project? What was the solution using your product, or your product as a part of that solution? Obviously, you want to be honest with it and understand that your product is a part of a bigger picture there. Not just saying that your product single-handedly saved the day on this project, but it could be the case. But I wouldn't over embellish things, but be honest about it and show how. Also talk about how your team was a problem solver for the architect, showing how our team got together with the architect and developed shop drawings or whatever they needed to do, had all the tools that they needed to specify the project correctly, went out on the site and took care of it. All right, what's the best way to follow up without being a pain? That's a great question, Neri. It's part of it is reading the room. We've all been in those situations. Most of us are been in sales, and we know the sales pitch, and we can usually see it right away. But when you can tell when somebody just gets in front of you and they just kind of hit play, and they're not taking visual cues. They haven't done their research on who you are and what you do, and they just kind of start blabbing. I mean, you can kind of see that they're actually maybe thinking about something else, and they're just kind of playing out their presentation in front of you. But I would say being specific, being responsive to how an architect is reacting to your presence and your ability to be a go-to resource for them. I mean, obviously not being annoying, not contacting them too much. Ask them, how often would you like me to, keep in touch, and how would you like me to keep in touch? I mean, email you, phone call, just to say, hey, I'm here. Most of them will say, yeah, every once in a while, every couple months or something like that, send me an email, just let me know if anything's new. Most of them, if they value information and a broader team of people that can truly help them, will not have a problem with that. Anything that I do recommend, not necessarily just if you get an architect's email, not putting them on a big spam list for marketing emails, especially if they're really frequent. So an example of that would be, you get a lead, like our education courses, you get your monthly lead report. The best way to follow up from those is going to be, even if it's a template, a personalized email. Dear Mr. Smith, Mrs. Smith, thank you for taking the time to take our course online and get the credits. If you have any issues, please let us know. But in the meantime, thank you for learning about our product. Below are some links to some resources that you may find interesting, including our guide specifications, CAD details, drawings, etc. So make it personal. Don't make them feel like just another number. If they're important specifier, don't put them on a marketing email list for spam emails. Just keep it personal so you're not annoying them. If they say, hey, I'm Bob with ABC company, and they get ABC emails like twice a week, and they're just like, oh no, I don't want to talk to you guys, and so it's that's one way, or a couple ways, I guess, to kind of avoid that. Okay, here's a question. Are you finding that manufacturers are investing more money into marketing strategies like social platforms, etc., with everything going on, what marketing strategies, platforms do you see getting traction? So pretty much anything, I mean, most things that are virtual, I mean, obviously, a lot of, social media obviously is great, but I will say this, social media, you either go all in or don't show up to the party. I mean, it's pretty much, it is a beast that constantly has to be fed. If you want it to grow, if you want people to like your pages, you have to put out compelling content. And part of it is not just pushing out your own stuff constantly, but commenting and contributing to the overall conversation of your industry. Talking about things that maybe not specific to your products and your company, but just industry-wide, things that are interesting, that are funny, that are whatever for people, and staying engaged with people. That's how you get people to follow you and actually pay attention to what you're putting out there. So social media is great. It allows you to constantly engage new folks, new audiences, and obviously, that's going to continue to be a growing platform as people that have really engaged in social media, especially younger people, get into positions where they're making decisions on projects. So that's obviously an important thing. Anything virtual is important. I mean, having a way to give your lunch and learns on a virtual platform, whether it's something you do through an organized webinar that we do, or whether you're just giving a lunch and learn through a Zoom meeting, just like you would a lunch and learn in your office. We have ways of making that simplified, but regardless of how you do it, staying engaged is important. And we found that most of our clients have really had no troubles getting architects to get on board with some of these virtual presentations. So I hope that answers some of those. But again, I'll go back to, just to add to that a little bit, the virtual platforms like trade shows are, you'll kind of feel like, I mean, what we felt like is they're trying to, put a square peg in a round hole when it comes to putting these trade shows virtually, because they're honestly, with as big and massive as they are really just too big to make as just a virtual event. They are trying to replicate things online and virtually that were normally in person, and they don't really translate well. But there are some things on there that, like the networking opportunities. There's some networking platforms that I know the Greenville in particularly had a great networking platform that you could search for people. And it even had kind of an AI component that had smart connections. These are people that you may want to connect with, and it gives you their information, and you can reach out to them and set meeting times and everything else. So those are great. I mean, I do think that's worthwhile participating in. But, and as far as, investing your time, I would also look at what local AIA chapters and other chapters are doing. I will tell you this, local chapters like AIA and CSI and GSGBC, they're really hurting because they're not able to meet in person. They don't have their in-person fundraisers they're doing. So they're hurting pretty bad. So, look and see what they're doing and maybe what you can offer in terms of virtual engagement with their audience, or ask them, hey, how can I reach out to your people, virtually, or when are you doing in-person things? Get on board early, with when they are ready to open stuff up. Here we go. So feel free to contact us with any questions. If you want us to engage with you and give you some ideas even further specifically to your company and your particular needs and goals, let us know. We'd be happy to do that. Whether it's something we end up helping you on through one of our programs or not, we don't charge a fee for consulting for these things. We just have a lot of experience and been doing this for almost 40 years now, and we have a lot of great experiences and knowledge and great people that have a lot of good ideas. So, and also a lot of it is, just from the feedback we get from our clients, and just, what works for them and what doesn't. That's a lot of times what we get feedback on. So feel free to reach out to us, or if you need any specific information about any of our programs, we'll be happy to get that to you as well. And we're going to be having another presentation here in mid-April. dealing with more specifically, more sustainability and lead specific opportunities. So stay tuned for that one. That'll be coming up here in mid-April. So with that, I bid you adieu. And if there's anything else you need, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thanks everyone, and have a great rest of the afternoon and week.